Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we have two very special guests with us today. We have Grant and Chris from the Hardy Dice Friends.
Ooh. Hello.
Hello.
How you guys doing today?
Oh, yeah, we're all right, wow. Yeah, we're having a nice time. We're jolly. We're lubed up and ready to roll.
You are hearty, you might say?
You know,
No.
I'm honestly, I'm thinking maybe getting the trading standards in on that one, because we describe ourselves as Hearty Dice Friends, but we are perilously ill.
No.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, we're just like dust in the wind.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's, you know, we're dealing with it.
It's basically
Yeah,
fine.
basically.
Touch of the jaundice or something.
Oh man, if only it was just jaundice.
No.
Anyway.
Well, would you guys like to tell our listeners about your podcast?
Yeah, Chris, you do it.
All right, I will.
Yeah, fine.
So, Hardy
Are you
Dice...
are you going to our fucking website to look up our
Yeah, I'm
podcast?
just going to read our blurb. No, I'm not going to our fucking website.
Oh, actually, can we swear on your podcast?
Go ahead if you can, try not to, but if one gets through, I can if I can't edit it out, I'll bleep it.
Okay, that's fair. This is
Right,
going to be a
okay.
mission.
Okay, yeah, ready to rock. Okay, yeah, keep
So,
it clean.
Hardy Dice Friends answers role-playing questions in such a manner as to be as little help as possible.
The diametric opposite of your mission statement.
Yes.
For a while, wasn't your mission statement that we answer questions whether you want us to or not?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we forcibly take questions from the internet.
And then deliberately misinterpret them.
Sure.
And we answer them, and it generally ends up in dragon sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're really
That is a
big
common
into,
thing.
We really like... What's the thing? So, like, it's not eroticism. More, it's genuine extrapolation on what it would be like to be in a committed relationship with fantasy races.
Sure, you know, and why do Dragonborn have mammaries?
Why? What, to feed their live young?
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's questions like that and more that we seek to answer.
We haven't done the Dragonborn Baps, Chris.
Well, let's get involved
We haven't
on
done
that.
it. Yeah, okay. Question one. This one comes in from Grant Howitt of Manor Park. Why do you think Dragonborn ladies have chest bits?
Maybe they don't serve the same purpose. Maybe that's where they store their breath weapon.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, that's legit.
Or there's some sort of vestigial landing pad,
sure. There you go.
There you go.
like on a goose.
Landings.
Oh my goodness.
Let's reel
All right.
that one in.
Okay, well, so I guess you guys want to go ahead and get into the episode?
Yeah, go for it. Make it happen.
Okay, cool.
Guide us in.
Now, Grant, you had said that possibly one of you guys might come up with an intro for the Dragon's Horde.
Oh, I got one.
You got one.
Yeah,
Okay,
Grant's
okay.
got one.
Then whenever you'd like to go.
Okay, cool. So, adventurers, you find yourself in the Dragon's Horde. It's lit by flickering torchlight and candles, and there are red marks on the floor, which at first you think are blood, but later you see they're rose petals leading towards. It seems as though the dragon, who you now see in the reflective glint of all the gold he has hoarded, you can see his majestic golden red scales. He's stretched a silk sheet over his hoard, and he gestures towards you, and you feel almost powerless to resist, so handsome this dragon is. And the dragon, just before he reaches forward and touches your cheek, as if to put a delicate, uncharacteristically delicate kiss upon your pallid, bearded face. And at the corner of your eye, you spy a magical item that the dragon has put on his hoard. What's that item today?
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
Hold on.
Is that what you guys normally do, yeah?
I need to turn on a fan over here. It's getting a little warm.
I'll just say right now.
Sounds like I turned on two fans already. You know what I mean?
I think I'm going to go ahead and put an explicit tag on this one, just to be safe.
What? You just kissed a dragon. There's nothing untoward about that.
Well, but if you want to swear, go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, great.
So yeah.
I'm gonna try and not. We'll see how it goes.
See if I can. Yeah.
Personal challenge, yeah.
It's a fun challenge. Yeah, put an explicit tag on because no promises.
All right. So our item for today is the Book of Night Without Moon. And this was a Paizo RPG Superstar item. It was submitted by Sam Zeitlin onto Paizo.com. But this item is a black grimoire whose pages are mostly blank, but a few contain rough watercolor silhouettes. The Book of Night Without Moon is a repository for trapped shadows. To sever a shadow from its owner and add it to the book, a character must place the book in the shadow of a willing or helpless victim with 5 or fewer hit dice and trace the shadow's outline in ashes, a simple ritual taking 5 minutes. A creature whose shadow is stolen must make a DC 18 will save or be sickened by a nameless melancholy until its shadow is returned. As a standard action, the book's bearer may release a shadow from the book, conjuring an illusory duplicate of the shadow's owner, as if with the spell Shadow Conjuration. DC 18 will save to recognize the conjuration as an illusion. The shadow is intelligent and can follow complex commands but cannot speak. The shadow serves the character who released it for 1 hour or until destroyed, whichever comes first. Then the shadow returns instantly and permanently to its original owner, wherever he or she may be. It will not return to the book and may not be stolen again. And then it says that a book of Night Without Moon purchased or found as treasure will have 2d6 shadows present inside it, chosen by the DM. So yeah, so this item it's a book. We've had a few magic items in the past that were books. I think a book is a neat theme for an item. But this one severs people's shadows and then stores them for later summoning.
Yeah, it reminds me of something like a darker, like Peter Pan sort of story.
Well, if I don't know if you knew this, but the original Peter Pan story was actually very, very dark.
Oh, sure.
In fact, the reason that the Lost Boys never grew up was because Peter Pan killed them once they reached a certain age.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised they didn't call this the Book of Shadows, actually. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, a bit weird that.
Yeah.
I guess because you wouldn't cast a shadow if there was no
Oh,
moon?
sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Honestly, it sounds like a way to set up a counterfeit vampire ring to me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like if you just wanted like what's the thing about vampires? They don't cast a shadow. Like my mate over here, who's a vampire, don't notice the fact that he's sicking up into a bucket. He's an actual vampire, so give me all your money.
Right.
That sort of thing.
It's only a DC 18 will save. Vampire's going to have more than that.
No, that's the thing. He's not a real vampire. We're just claiming he's a vampire because he's got no shadow.
Oh, the ruse is complete.
You see, yeah. Now you'd also need to maybe get some sort of complicated thing set up with like a mirror, which is actually a window onto an identical room. So,
Mate, just
No,
just
don't
some
you
rubber,
look into
just
the
some
mirror.
rubber teeth and a cape, and you're away.
Yeah.
just a bit of flour on his face, yeah.
It's just like the mirror, instead of a mirror, like a gate spell that just goes right behind him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Creates a portal.
You could also kind of use this in the reverse, in that you could, if your buddy is a vampire and you don't want people to know that he is, be like, oh no, his shadow got stolen.
Yeah, we're just trying to find a shadow. That's all.
Yeah.
Or supply him with a ready supply of shadows.
There you go.
And as long as they're roughly similar to the way he looks.
Right.
What chosen by the DM from the Summon Monster 4 list, so his shadow is that of a particularly dire badger.
Oh no, I'm just not feeling very well at the moment.
Ignore the spines.
I think that it lends a much needed element of whimsy to Dungeons and
Sure.
Dragons, which can be very scientific in its makeup of how things are made, and like, or how many feet you can throw a ball with strength 18, etc. to have. Well, it nicks your shadow. How? Shut up.
Right.
And that's a pleasant level of a wizard did it. Shut up, which is one of the few problems I have with D&D is how codified the magic is, especially once you hit 3.5. So I quite I like that a lot. I'd be tempted to have the shadows talk to the wielder or write the book as they wait along.
Okay.
So there's some way they can communicate with the owner of the book or write down what their person's doing in some way. Or I suppose that's quite. I mean, if it's just a dire badger, it's not
Probably not the great conversationalist.
vomming up in set again.
More digging.
Yeah.
I think the key to it for me is that I'd set it up as the main magic item of the villain. because of this line with the shadow of a willing or helpless victim.
Yeah.
So somebody's actually stealing shadows for a purpose, because all it takes is a standard action to release it. So you can release these pretty machine gun quick.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just fill up a room.
Just suddenly, and here's my army.
Yeah. Alternatively, here's a birthday party.
There was an item we had a few weeks back that was like, it was like a headdress or something that like it conjured up a group of commoners.
Oh yeah, it was the Circlet of Friends or something.
Yeah, Circlet of Friends.
Or something like that.
Yeah, it created a crowd of people that all like really liked you, but they were
Yes.
just like commoner folk and like only had like 1 hit point or something. But
Yeah, just like 20 people just appear around you, and they're just wandering aimlessly and talking about something unrelated to what's happening.
yeah, they're just like a crowd to
Love
hide
that.
Yes.
I think that's
the best
wonderful.
armor in the game.
Yeah, my god, I'm using that in combat round 1. Like clearing traps.
Yeah. We've I don't know if we've ever mentioned it on the podcast, but Jeff and I have a little inside joke going back pretty far. That is the kobold with a bell.
in. Yes.
And it's anytime you're in a place with a bunch of traps, you bring along a kobold with a bell. You have him ring the bell, and then you tell him, okay, ring the bell while you walk down this hallway. If at some point he stops ringing the bell, you know that he got killed by a trap. So then you send another kobold to go and get the bell and ring it back.
Right, because that bell's expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Much more. I
Definitely
mean, a
worth
good
more
bell.
than a kobold.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So I guess you guys got anything else for this item?
It's a fun thing to have. It's
Yeah.
The key is how fast you can cast them,
yeah.
because you can
Like,
fire them out as a
once
standard
around.
action. I mean, shadows are only 1/5 as effective as everything else, but when you get 10 of them,
Sure.
Yeah.
And I like that it comes with 2d6 shadows already inside, so that can be a really good like story hook or something for the DM. Just so like,
Ooh, yeah. What if you get it and then you bring out a shadow and like it's some sort of a recognizable creature or person?
oh, it's you get the shadow of a guy who is claiming to be a vampire, and then you know he's not a vampire.
Oh snap!
I think it'd be fun as well to have you find all of your own shadows. in
Oh,
there,
wow.
Ooh.
And then you realize that's what's been going on. That's why you've been throwing up.
That's really creepy. That's really cool.
Yeah, you just haven't noticed that you don't have a shadow.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I probably wouldn't notice if I didn't have a shadow. Like, it's not the sort of thing I'd be, wait a second, guys.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it would take a while for me to notice, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde for today. If anybody wanted to send us,
The dragon waves you adieu. Come back soon, my pretty, he says, slinging the Book of Night Without Moon into your satchel.
now here's the question: Do we tell the dragon that we'll call them?
Like, don't be silly, he doesn't have a phone, he's a dragon.
We'll send a sending spell. or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. No, the dragon's pretty easy. Like, you're not the only adventurer coming in here and giving him nice mouth kisses. So, like, he's cool. He's cool. Like, come back or not, it's cool. Whatevs.
Okay.
Now,
When you're in-
is he
when
is
you're
he
in
using
town,
a
drop him.
polymorph spell, or is this like full on
No,
dragon?
he's a big effing dragon.
Okay. All right.
All
Big
right.
lad.
Okay, well, as we bid adieu to the dragon, that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde. Jeff, if somebody wanted to submit items for the Dragon's Horde, or questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre, how would they get a hold of us?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
Okay, and then just a brief mention, I want to direct anybody to go check out critacademy.com. They're an associate podcast of ours from the Crit Nation Fellowship. They're really, really good. Check them out. Also, if you want to get a free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/conflict. You can get yourself a free audiobook, free 30-day trial. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it before they charge you, and you'll still keep the free audiobook. Awesome. All right, you guys want to get into some questions?
Hell yeah.
let's do it.
All right. First question comes from Brian on email, and he asks, have you ever played a tabletop RPG at a convention? If so, what was your experience?
Now, full disclosure, I have not.
And I haven't either.
So we've actually had this question for a little while. We figured we would bring it up when we had guests, hopefully guests that have.
Yes.
So Grant and Chris, how have your experiences been?
Never done it. Chris?
All right.
No.
Oh, for
okay,
3.
next question.
No, we have. It's been weird. Chris, I think the first game which we both played at a convention together was in Australia.
Oh, wow.
quite a while. Because I used to live in Australia, and Chris came out to visit, and so we went to a convention, and like Chris was over for 2 weeks, and I wanted to try and find some stuff for him to do while he was over there, rather than just sit and stare directly out of the windows drinking expensive beer. So
Listening to his viola playing.
I can't believe you flew her over, but you made us pay for your ticket. Point is, we went to this convention, and I thought it would be fun, so I signed us up to a few games, and I maybe made some mistakes.
Errors were certainly made. Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry. Were you running games or playing games?
Both.
Okay.
So at that point, I was running something called Havoc Brigade, which is a. Oh, Chris, you were in that. Why don't you describe Havoc Brigade?
So Havoc Brigade is essentially a drunken pub crawl with orcs,
Okay.
but with the idea of taking a city.
Well, you're there to capture a prince from within the city.
Yeah.
It so ends up you destroy the city as you go through.
It's a bonkers game.
That sounds pretty good.
Yes, it's lots of fun. I don't think it's free anymore, but it's certainly cheap, and it comes with all characters and art and stuff, which is nice.
Full disclosure, game written by Grant Howitt.
Yeah, full disclosure, game written by me.
I'll put that in the show notes then.
Yeah.
I think over half of all games are written by me anyway, so it's fine.
Probably, yeah.
I do churn them out.
In previous episodes, we've mentioned, I know Jeff played a game of The Witch is Dead, correct?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to make it that day when they played that, but and then we've mentioned Honey Heist because I saw that and I thought it was hilarious. Haven't played it though.
That is bait.
That is the flagship.
That is, yeah. I mean, we've got it on a T-shirt.
Oh no.
That's pretty cool.
Now it is we have I think included the world's first rule book on a T-shirt.
Oh wow!
Purchase.
We definitely involved gotten the world's first GM section on a T-shirt.
Yeah, printed upside down so those dirty players can't see it.
That's a pretty good idea.
You just look down at your lap and there it is. Anyway, and I've run Honey Heist at cons as well. And like one thing I will say about running games at cons, from a non-jokey point of view, is that the energy is a much more different experience. I found that you have to get people in and get them excited, and then end early.
Okay.
Sure.
I find that the 4-hour slot they give you at cons is too long.
Yeah.
Because if you want to try and entertain that many people for that long without anything else to do, without being friends with each other, it's exhausting. So I run for 2 hours and I don't sit down. I stand up and I run around the table and I act and you know, make nice big movements and keep people entertained, and then generally wrap up about 2.5 hours in. Otherwise, it's just unsustainable.
Right. With most conventions, like the schedules are always so tight. People have like different like panels and stuff they want to get to.
Yeah.
And like there's always conflicting schedules of what they want to go see. So ending it short is probably the best way to do it.
On the subject of running too long, Chris and I played a Star Wars game.
Oh my god!
Really?
So we're not the greatest of Star Wars fans. Not like huge Star Wars fans. I like Star Wars. It's great.
Yeah, same here.
We thought, you know what? Let's have a nice Star Wars game. It's a world we know, so we can sort of segue in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's not quite what we were ready for. When we started playing, it turns out what they wanted was an exact recreation of the films.
Oh.
Well, what they'd promised was a game in which it starts off at the start of the first Star Wars film, like the fourth. You know which one I mean, the one from the 70s. And it starts off at the start, and we all play the characters from Star Wars, and then we get to go ahead and do whatever we want from that start point. And so Chris and I are like, let's play the robots.
Yeah.
How would you not play the robots?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's find ourselves some robot babes. R2D2. And Chris, you going to do your R2D2
I'm not going to do my
impression,
R2D2 impression.
I dialed out my C3PO impression.
Yeah, that's fine. Mine's a series of clicks and whirs.
Yeah, it's good though, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is, no, that wasn't it. Point is, they didn't let us steal a land speeder and find robot babes. They wouldn't let us pilot the spaceship. And they wouldn't let us do anything. And every time that we or anyone else in the story tried to divert from the main plot of Star Wars, they stopped us.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and there were people there who were so into it that they were doing it word for word.
My
They were
goodness.
super having the whole thing, and it's like I guess we just we misread the situation, and we wanted to basically have a fun improv game around the theme of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this was basically fan fiction, which was rewriting the first plot of Star Wars, but exactly the same.
Like the Psycho shot for sure.
Like, what's the point if you're just going to go through exactly as it went in the movie?
Yeah, like
That's very much the question we were asking ourselves and the GM.
As hour 2 rolled around.
Oh god, it took so long.
Oh my
and
goodness.
like, I mean, bless their hearts, there was a husband and wife GM who were doing it, and they were really enthused about it, and they were having a great time.
They were dressed up.
Oh god, yeah, they were there in their fascist imperial
The
hats.
security officer uniforms.
Why are the Imperium so popular, Chris? I don't understand that one. they don't come across well in the films.
They're not the goodies.
I know they've got better boots, but so did the Nazis.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with, there's another podcast called The Film Reroll, where they explicitly do go through the plots of movies in GURPS.
Oh god, GURPS.
Their whole thing is that, like, if the game goes elsewhere, the game goes elsewhere, and it rarely follows the movie.
see, that's funny.
They did the movie Speed and ended the movie after the first scene.
Oh, okay.
And that was it. And then they did Wizard of Oz, and that went off the rails. They attacked the Good Witch, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the first episode.
Makes sense.
So yeah, so I think that could be done well, but not if you stick too closely to the movie.
Yeah. I'd like, so there's a podcast which I really like called so the main podcast is called Blaster Podcast, but they do something called Muffed Movies where they improvise the entire films, and so that they've done all of the old Star Wars films, and they start off on brand, and then they loosely hover left and right around the plot. Like a skimmer on the forest moon of Endor. But a little Star Wars reference for you there, nerds. And
there you go.
And
It'd be great if you remember the couple's name and just called them out on it.
God, no. We didn't have a great time, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, they had a whale of a time, and they looked genuinely happy throughout all of it. So
a lot of the problems with con games when you turn up is, one, they can be ruined by a single difficult player.
Yes.
And two, there's often a mismatch of what people are coming to the table expecting. So you don't have that session zero, you don't have the time to build up a relationship or rapport with the players. You go right in, you've got 4 hours to do something, and it's kind of like just jamming together with some random people you meet at a festival and expecting to write beautiful music. You're not going to do it.
Yeah. I at my local library, I've been over the last 6 months or so, every month or two, I do a 1 hour introduction to D&D. And I figure it's probably kind of similar to, what it would be like to run a game at a convention. Of course, a lot shorter because it's 1 hour. What can you do in 1 hour? Yeah. But yeah, I've pre-made characters because character creation just takes so long. Mm-hmm. And so there have been times where I felt like, if there was a session zero, this would be going a lot smoother. But, obviously there's just no time. I've had
session zeros are so important.
Yeah. I've had the benefit of, most of the time, half the people at the table are people that I invited because I've played with them before. Like Jeff has been at a couple of them and so on. But, we get newcomers too. And I would love, I love teaching the game to new people, but it is always a little bit clunky at first. And yeah, I imagine running at a convention would be just as clunky, if not more so.
Yeah, because a lot of times people who go to the conventions and go to things like playing a game and everything, they're there because there's going to be an audience there, so they get to be a ridiculous person in front of an audience rather than just in front of their house cat. So the chance of having a problem player is much, much higher at a convention than it would
definitely
be at even just a gaming store.
Yeah.
And also you don't have the it's quite difficult to establish a social contract where a games master can step in and deal with that and say and not just sort of work around them, but say, hey, you're not being cool. You need to pack this in.
Sure.
And that's the sort of thing which you can address implicitly, or you can set out if you're playing with a group at home, or even if you're playing with a group of people when you have a whole evening to do it.
Yeah.
Even if you never met them. But there's just something about a con. Also, there's hygiene factors at a con, and you don't eat properly, you don't sleep properly.
Yeah.
Everyone smells. I smell. It's a grimy, horrible situation. You roll between caffeine and whiskey and hangover and unconsciousness for the entirety of the weekend until you're stumbling around New Jersey at 1 a.m. looking for a sandwich.
Man speaks from experience.
Yeah, I once watched at a convention. I watched a cosplayer get kicked out of his hotel room and like had to like sleep on the street and stuff like that. It gets
Oh my
it gets
goodness.
awful at conventions.
What was he dressed as?
Um,
What was he dressed as?
it was gosh, I forget the character's name, but the guy from Trigun.
Okay.
Oh, Vash the Stampede.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, at least he had the big coat
Homeless
for
Vash
warmth.
the Stampede.
It was
Oh,
it was
no.
good cosplay too. Like he had a really good outfit, but like they like he was like he met somebody online that he could like room up with, but but the person he met up with was already like going halvesies on somebody that they met online, and those people didn't agree to that third person, so like they got mad and kicked him out, and I was like,
Oh, no. And that's the thing about Vash the Stampede. You can't fight back properly, can you?
Anime jokes, really.
Chris, it's for the nerds.
for the nerds.
Yeah.
We're nerds.
Shut up! They won't know that. They'll just think I did my reading before I came on the podcast.
Very clever.
Yeah, I've never been to a gaming convention. I've been to 2 comic book conventions, but that's it. And like I didn't really take part in anything. I just kind of walked around and looked at stuff.
Sure.
So
Gaming conventions generally are a great time.
yeah, I've been meaning to. A long time ago I had an opportunity to go to Origins, and I didn't take it, and I'm kind of regretting that.
Chris and I did 9 Worlds over the summer, which was a top time.
Yeah, Nine Worlds is a UK convention, sort of big inclusive convention.
It's a
so
nerd
well
convention.
Yeah.
It's quite nicely organised. Like it's nice that it's got an interesting range of topics, none of which I was hugely interested in, but I'm glad they're there. But importantly, the gaming room was run by basically the entirety of our podcast Discord.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So like we never wanted for a board game. We could just sort of walk in and just sort of clap our hands.
Thanks for that, by the way, if you're listening.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. You guys want to go on to the next question?
Sure, it is.
Okay.
Our next question comes from Great Heart, and this was on Reddit. They ask, improvisation, how should I get better at it, and what's your perspective on yes and?
Yeah. Grant and Chris, do you guys have anything off the top?
Well, I know Grant is blistering to answer this question.
No, listen. I've talked about this so much in every single part of my life. I'm almost embarrassed, which is why I'm hugely devoted to the idea of yes and. I've done a few improv courses. I'm not a master of it by any means. I'm very much still a student in a lot of this, and I sure as shit wouldn't go. I sure as darn wouldn't go on stage. I love doing improv. I love the idea of having a situation, a reality arise out of multiple people communicating with something, which is what role playing is effectively. The world of Dungeons and Dragons is not as what's contained within the books, but it is what is said during a game. That is what Dungeons and Dragons is. That is the purest expression of the idea that is Dungeons and Dragons. And so to improvise is very much the essence of role-playing, and so I often find it quite difficult when I do things, the sort of thing I'd normally do in an improv session, where I start making suggestions for other people, where I start building other people's characters around me, and I start building the situation. Quite often people will rebel against that and be like, no, what? No, definitely not. And as someone who's used to always having yes and, it's a sort of a nauseating block to it. It's like, oh no, my immersion, and it just goes. Chris, you might have a more measured view on this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the level of like training that Grant has, but yes and is crucial to role-playing games. Mm-hmm. Too many role-playing games very quickly shut you down and tell you what you can't do, where they should be going, just go nuts, do what you think's wise, and we'll take stock of that within the internal logic of the system, rather than the rules say no.
Right.
There's also something I'd like to raise from a game design point of view, and this is something which it came to me last night. So Chris and I have recently written a book called Spire, which is it's a fantasy role-playing game about revolution.
Sure.
In a fairly traditional fantasy world, but citied up, urbaned up, and the setting which we've ended up is certainly not the one which I wrote down when I came up with the idea to do the project. It's changed and it's adapted, and Chris came in, I think, about 3 revisions in. And what's fascinating is, between the two of us, we've improvised a setting, so we are both the final authority on Spire. In that anything which happens in the world, we both know what it is. We can both understand that, and we've managed to build a sensation of what the world is and what's right and what's wrong for the setting, organically between the two of us because of this improvisation, because that's how we write. And it's just a really fascinating thing to realise that the game would be less than half as good if I hadn't had Chris involved, because there's an element which I can't control, there's an element which I'm not privy to, so it throws up surprises and it combines it in fascinating, interesting ways.
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's why I like the using like the generators and things like that, because like when I'm trying to come up with ideas by myself, like I don't like to have a blank sheet in front of me. I like to have bits and pieces that are out of my control, but I use them in a way to to put something together.
Yeah. I would much rather do a connect the dots than to just draw a picture.
Sure.
I mean, not literally, but when doing something in role playing, I would rather have some pieces that I have.
That's why your
put
gallery
together.
opening failed. I seem to remember.
1, 2, 3. Where's the 4?
Yeah.
So you guys seem to have a much more trad view on role playing than we do. I think we skew more towards indie. What's your view on improvisation?
Well, I think that it's one of the most important things that you can have as a DM, especially. I think that players too, but more for a DM. And I really don't think I was a good DM until I learned to improvise. Like I've taken a few improv classes. I've taken 2 classes. One that was more like, whose line is it anyway type improv, and then the other one that was about just like improv for the actor. And so it was a lot less about humor and a lot more about just coming up with like plots and coming up with dialogue and stuff on the spot. And so I think those were important for me, but I don't necessarily think everybody should go out necessarily and take an improv class. But at the very least, you should participate with someone that is improving a lot, so that you can see how they do it, and then you can join in and have a good environment to try it out. Because until you try it out, you're not going to be good at it.
You raised an interesting point there, saying how it's important for GMs, but not necessarily so much for players. Why? Do you believe that that players can improve can get something out of being open to improv, or because I suppose in my view, playing a role playing game is a much purer form of improv than GMing it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm coming mostly from a Dungeons and Dragons standpoint, where the dungeon master creates something and then the players are mostly reacting to it. Now, of course, the best players I've had are the players that are doing more than just reacting. But I think that for most D&D games, the DM is probably going to need to be doing more improv. That's not to say that the players shouldn't. Yeah. The players absolutely should. But
I suppose if the players are reacting to what the GM's doing, that is improvisation, isn't it?
I suppose,
they're improvising responses. I mean, there's certain things like, well, I hit the guy with my axe because you sort of have to hit the guy with your axe.
Yeah.
But
in the sort of the trad D&D style, the DM definitely 100% needs that improvisation skill.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Needs to be able to just react when the player throws them a curveball and he's not ready for it. You can just land on it and be fine. The players don't necessarily need that as much because they're constrained by more rules.
Yeah.
They've got a sheet in front of them which essentially says these are the things you can do. And there's a lot of creativity, but you don't necessarily need improvisation as much in that situation.
Yeah.
When you're playing the sort of the cutting edge indie games of GM lists and stuff like that, then everybody needs that improvisation skill.
Right.
But I don't think you need it quite as much in standard D&D.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have to disagree with all of you.
Oh.
Because like in standard D&D, you can the GM can prep And so, like, the GM can do the least improv at the table. If the GM knows everything that's in every room and how and like the makeup of every NPC and the makeup of every dungeon room, then they can go through and not improvise a single thing, just work from their notes. Whereas the players have to improvise their own reactions to that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I guess I don't know. I guess I was thinking of improvisation in a different way, but no, you're definitely right. Let me ask you guys: what would you say? Yes, and is more important for the person running the game or for the players in the game? Because I was just thinking that, you know, as a game master, you need a lot of yes. I think yes and is very, very important, because I was a terrible dungeon master for a long time until I learned to say yes to my players. But
Were you no butting?
Yeah. Everything the players tried to do that wasn't what I had written down, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It wasn't even no, but it was just no.
Ugh. No, and you die.
Right. And so but then I was thinking that as a player, do you yes and, or do you spend most of your time as a player telling the GM no, because the GM says, okay, this trap springs, but then the player says no, I jump out of the way. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's still a very strong place for yes and there.
Okay.
Like, yes, the trap springs, and I jump out of the way.
Sure.
And it's more fun if it goes off, but you're quick enough to react to it, rather than you just hit it with a stick and it goes off.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
Good
a
point.
better story. I think also crucially, like, the idea of yes and, it very much relies on everyone doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you so there was a short form LARP game called and my apologies, this just isn't the name of the game. It's called The American.
Okay.
And the aim of the game is everyone sits around and they tell a story, and everyone goes yes and, and you sit in a circle and you tell a story. Aside from the American, who goes no and just disbelieves. I don't know why it was called The American. I know why. Well, that's the thing. A lot of the Americans I roleplayed with have been great, upstanding, top yes-anders. But, like, play continues until you want to stop.
Sure.
That's how it goes.
You just can't take it anymore.
Because it relies on everyone on that trust, on the idea of yes and being like, I don't know where this story's going, but I'm willing to steer it towards somewhere with you. I'm willing to take this and build on it and move on. And I think so much of Dungeons and Dragons comes out of the idea of, this is a puzzle which I have built with infinite resources that you must solve with finite resources and badly conferred information.
Sure.
And so the idea of the trap hits you, no, it doesn't, I get out of the way, makes sense, because it's like it's a challenge. It's rather than telling a story. And I think that in a lot of indie games we've moved past that, but it comes down to the whole roll to see if you get out of the way. Honestly, I think it's really important for players to yes and.
Okay.
And I think that not enough. I think that you can get a lot of awesome, exciting role-playing experiences if players are willing to say, I don't know why my character would do that. Let's find out.
Sure.
Rather than my character wouldn't do that, so I'm not going to do it.
That's kind of, as a dungeon master, that's kind of how I approach alignment. I don't look at alignment as like, oh no, your character wouldn't do that because he's lawful good. I would instead say, oh, your character's lawful good. Why does he do that?
Yeah. How does that feel?
Yeah.
How is he justifying that? Because, like, what's the phrase? Like, a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are for. Yeah.
Sure.
The idea is that if you're lawful good, it's no fun being lawful good until you're tested.
Yeah.
It's no, like, either it pushes you into conflict with an authority figure or an enemy in some way, or you want to break these vows, these morals that you've established for some other end, and that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
That's like part of the problem. I think, like, the most efficient way to play Dungeons and Dragons is to never go on an adventure. Because it's really dangerous and expensive, and you lose loads of hit points. Yeah, just farm goats.
Yeah.
If you want to be efficient. But it's not about efficiency, it's about telling cool stories. And players end up in this really weird, like, it's a masochist role where it's like, I'm playing this character, I want you to really mess them up. I want you to bring them to the edge of death. But I do want to win.
Yeah.
I once made a character that, like, I designed him all around, like, being a hunter-gatherer and not around an adventurer. I was like, yeah, he's gonna hunt for game and live off the land, and then he got into an adventure and was completely useless. So I was like, Gabe, can I make another character?
Yeah.
That looks like a spooky cave. I'll be out here hunting Sparrowhawk.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and then your second character was explicitly like, I'm here to go in search of knowledge, in search of magic and treasure and stuff. So
And then the class that I ended up choosing later on became less useful, and I was like, Gabe, can I multi-class?
Yeah.
So, oh goodness. Okay, so yeah, our next question comes from Baron Aram Heshvan.
Could you say it in the Baron's voice, please?
I don't think I can do that.
If you want to, I can.
Go for it.
This question is submitted by Baron Adam Heshvan on Paizo.com.
Strong.
They ask, what type of RPG genre, setting, and milieu has never been done, or rarely done, or perhaps rather poorly executed, that you would like to see? So different settings and genres of RPGs that haven't really been done well.
One thing that came to mind for me is just kind of like, there might be games like this that exist, but anything that deals heavily with stealth, I haven't really encountered any games that like really do it in a way that I think is meaningful.
Sure.
Have you seen Project Dark?
I have not.
It's a fascinating thing. It's
Okay.
about 2 years late now from Kickstarter. The creator, I forget the name of the guy who wrote it, but he sends out about one update every 2 months saying how he's very sorry. And look, here's a drawing. But it's basically Thief in that it has like the level of the building you're on is incredibly important.
Okay.
And it has, the density of the way in which it sets up stories has things like you can overhear conversations, which then has scripts which you give out to the other players to read. It's a hugely dense thing, and it requires the game to be that dense. Otherwise, the stealth doesn't work. That's the only game I've seen do it properly, or I say do it in a fascinating way for me.
Sure.
Yeah, but otherwise, stealth is just never represented properly, is it?
It's not fun yet. We
Yeah.
haven't done it yet.
Nobody's cracked it.
I think it was from an episode of your podcast. I think you guys talked about like in stealth, it's pretty much, do you want to get into a fight? No? Then roll for stealth.
Sure.
It's an avoidance. Is that avoidance? Avoidance.
Yep.
It's an avoidance tactic.
Well, I think also it's like a block, because like generally when players resort to stealth, it's a thing they really don't want to get involved with.
Yeah.
And then if they fuck up that stealth, it's like, well, I guess okay, like you get arrested and hung. Well, what's the deal? Like, I can't. The stakes are tricky, and I think like normally if someone's sneaking into somewhere in a TV show, then if they get discovered, that pushes the plot forward.
Yeah.
But it's much harder to do in role playing terms, because it just is such a block, and it's such a surprise to suddenly change from being seen to unseen.
Sure.
I think like Project Dark is interesting, but it's not out, and it's late. It's really late. One thing which I'd be really interested in seeing is medicine,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
because we have an awful lot of games about putting bits of metal into people, but not about taking them out.
Sure.
Trauma center RPG.
What kind of trauma? Yeah, kind of trauma center RPG. I'd be really interested in playing a. So that's the thing. So like military medicine, unfortunately, generally amounts to jabbing someone full of morphine and waiting till a helicopter arrives.
Yeah.
Super gluing things shut.
Yeah, super doing stuff. But like, I'd be kind of interested in doing perhaps a fictionalized view of military medicine, or an alternate history view of military medicine, or something along those lines, where it's like you've got really horrible things to deal with, and you have to make some difficult decisions as you play, the MASH core, or you play whatever sort of medics you have on hand. That for me is a really interesting story, and I think there could be something fun along those lines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I say fun, not really, because you're dealing with the deaths of 19-year-old Americans in some godforsaken hellhole.
Interestingly horrifying. Just
Spec Ops the Line sort of thing. Yeah.
Now,
Chris, what about you?
well, let me just ask: would you
my
would you be interested in a game that was essentially MASH the RPG?
I think so. That's the thing.
I'd be
Like
super
MASH
on board
wasn't.
with that.
It wasn't really about the medicine, as most like most shows aren't. Most good shows aren't about the things they're about. They're about people.
Sure.
I think we all want to play Hawkeye. I think that's understandable. He's a flawed genius, and so I definitely identify with half of that. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd be interested in playing MASH the RPG, but I think someone's actually done it. I think I backed that on Kickstarter. It's not out yet, but it's on. Someone's written Mash the RPG. It's not officially endorsed, but it's a Powered by the Apocalypse Korean War Medical Center simulator.
I feel like if it has a DVD box set, it also has a tabletop game.
That's the key, isn't it?
All right. So yeah, Chris, did you have any ideas?
So there's an awful lot of post-apocalyptic settings. But we've not had many post-apocalyptic settings that are done 100 years after the fact. That we've done very well. There's things like Summerland, which has got the sort of the reclaiming of urbanization by the forests and that sort of stuff. But I'm kind of enamored with this concept of post-apocalyptic time of plenty, when the earth starts regrowing naturally.
Okay.
And then bad things happen in that situation, rather than minutes after the apocalypse where there's just zombies everywhere.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
Everyone, for some reason, really gets into BDSM.
Yeah, starts driving cars around and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I want to see a game that's done in that period where you just like, well, we've just finally remade Civilization. Oh, god damn it, what now?
James Isles's game that had the recent reprint.
Legacy.
Was it bloody called Legacy? That seems kind of cool. And that's kind of like that's about building your legacy again amongst these tribes.
It's about rebuilding it.
Yeah. So I think you can get something out of that. Plus beautifully produced game as well.
Very nice.
I always had an issue with I've played like a couple of the Fallout games, and I always had an issue with the fact that it is ostensibly a long time after the bombs fell, yet there's all this stuff that like still exists and is still working. I feel like either they should have set it right
good
after
American technology, my friend.
I suppose, yeah. So I feel like they should have either set it much closer to the apocalypse, or they should have been like, well, all this stuff is breaking down, and so you have to fix. I mean, I know there's a little bit of that, but
sure.
Like you'll go into bunkers and there's stuff that's like lights that are still on from a place that hasn't been opened in 100 years, and it's.
Well, I mean, like that's the whole idea with the vaults
camp,
and stuff.
I guess it's like I think as well. Like there's a nod to the understanding that the science in Fallout is about as solid as the magic in Skyrim.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that it just does its thing, and so like we wanted to have a kind of 50s runabout. That's why we have all these white picket fences, and also like that's kind of during the time like during the fear that we were all going to be obliterated was between I'm guessing about 1950 and 1989 roughly.
Yeah.
And so those big iconic moments in terms of nuclear war come from that time, and so I think it's fun to try and play around and explore with that. I definitely get you. But I think that like what they've gone for is almost like a cargo cult thing. Like this, like these are the tiny bits of civilization that have survived, so we're going to build out from these. So everyone still looks like teddy boys.
Sure.
Pompadours all round.
Yes.
You know what? I'd like more pompadours. There's not enough pompadours in the world. I can't go out of the house with a pompadour without looking like a prick.
So a Pompadour tabletop game. That's
There you go.
that genre has not been done.
That's
needs
my
to be
one
done.
pager. That's next month's one pager.
There you go.
Do it.
Fabulous Hair, the RPG.
Pompadour-orama.
If you don't mind me asking, Grant, what exactly is your creative process for coming up with one-page RPGs? Do you just start with an idea and then just write? If this is a trade secret, I can edit it out.
I mean, it comes to me like lightning from a clear blue sky. It strikes me instantly. No, I mean, primarily the first thing I do is I get on a train and then I ride the top of the train to the Forbidden Zone where the griffins fly.
Okay.
And then I have to try and hunt down a griffin. Now, the thing about griffins is they have very hard skin. So often I can fight a griffin for upwards of 2 to 3 hours, like sustaining terrible wounds. And then I cut out their hearts and I eat of it. And then a perfectly presented one-page role-playing game comes into my mind. I'll go home and my various wives will bathe me. And then I will yell out the rule, and I don't like using the word, but a mad scribe will write this down onto a single. It's Christopher here will write this down onto a single page of paper, And the only thing really keeping me out of doing more of them is a lack of griffins and a lack of scribes.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of visiting London last year. I have a sister that lives there.
Did you check out the Forbidden Zone?
Well, I didn't, but I was surprised to find out that there are actual griffins living in London.
Yeah,
just flying
sure.
around.
Yeah, I mean, like we try and keep them within the zone, because of the tourists. You don't want to have your kid dragged off by a griffin, do you? That's bad for tourism.
Right.
So I'm kind of upset that you learned about them. I'd have a word with the mayor. But,
I visited
works.
some seedy places, and I heard whispered tales in the shadows.
Oh, in the taverns, yeah. We have a lot of shadowy taverns in London. We really need to get some lights put in. But where else are you going to pick up quests, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to actually know how I write one-page role-playing game? Or is that good enough?
I think that's good enough.
Would you rather have a beautiful lie?
Well, I mean, if there's a simple I sit down with a cup of coffee and so on. If there's like a simple process to it, then I'd be interested.
Let's see. I generally have a rough idea for a story I want to tell, for like a fun game idea.
Sure.
So like for example, Criminal Bears was the one for Honey Heist.
Yes.
And then I'll think how I can best represent that with a simple role-playing mechanic. How I can best make that happen, and then I'll fail and call Chris.
Hello.
Chris then... So basically, I'll have most of the thing written, but I'll be like, Chris, I don't understand how it works. And then Chris will very patiently listen to me write the game. But disguises a conversation with him.
Yeah. Maybe if we just had +1 here, maybe that will work. Oh, look, it works now.
Oh, it works. Yeah, Chris just comes in with the hand of Michelangelo.
I feel like Chris is like an undercover psychiatrist or something.
You have no idea.
Oh my god. Yeah, the stuff Chris knows about me. Oh my days.
It's like
He could ruin me in seconds.
Criminal Bears. Tell us more about that.
What does that make you think of your father?
Yeah.
Well, I was raised by Criminal Bears, so.
Himself, a giant cat burgling panda.
and then generally I'll write it down in the Google Doc and then write it down on paper and then release it. So
And do you, because you do write all of them out on a sheet of paper, do you have you ever had to like do several tries to get it all on one sheet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally, at that point, what I'll do is I'll cut out the paragraphs from the page which has worked and then stick them onto a new page.
Okay.
Which adds a certain charm.
It looks a bit zany, which I like.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes legible as opposed to the other variant.
Oh my goodness. It's like a ransom note or something.
Very
kind
much
of,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
But for Patreon money.
Yeah.
There you go.
Pays your bills too, Taylor.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys want to move on to one more question and then
Sure.
call it a night?
Yeah, we can do one more quick one. Yeah. We could ask you a question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
All right, Chris, come over to this side of the podcast and confer with me for a second, okay?
I'm definitely not just going to our Discord questions.
No, we have to come up with one ourselves. One that's on brand. Let's have a quick look at the ones which our patrons have asked us. Hang on, let's have a quick look.
Mate, there's an entire thread here asking if halflings are hipsters.
Yeah, that one really goes on, doesn't it?
That really does go on.
This person's just imagining a bee with human arms and hands for legs.
So on brand. Here we go.
Yeah.
The bottom one. Because we can answer it as well in our podcast.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is kind of a grown-up question. I was hoping it would be about dicks or something.
Mate, there's no dick questions.
Fine.
There's no dick questions, only dick answers.
No, we've not had a dick question. I'm actually
Zimmerlin.
really upset.
Zimmerlim asks, "Dicks?" Question mark. No. Zimmerlim asks, "How do you make possession in combat interesting for the player possessed?"
Huh.
See, that's a good question. And I feel like a lot of players don't like the idea of their character being forced to do. Jeff is cracking up right now, and I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why.
He's laughing at dicks.
No, I'm laughing. A way to make possession better for the possessed is tastier paper.
Okay, I think I know what Jeff is. Okay, I think there was one time I passed Jeff a note. Was it
Yeah,
because somebody was possessed.
Or I was, I believe I got.
It just said eat this
Well,
paper.
I like, as a DM, I like to pass out notes to my players sometimes, and sometimes I'll pass out notes
Okay.
just to like trick the other players into thinking that something's going on.
Yeah.
There was one time, two of my players, Jay and Steve, were passing notes between each other, and then I wanted in on it, so I passed Jeff a note that said something like, "Act like this is an interesting piece of information," or whatever.
I think it just said like laugh at this, and I saw it.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
kind of laughed, and then
And then Jay and Steve tried like grabbing the note from Jeff to see what it was that I wrote. And then I was like, don't let them see it. Don't let them see it. And so, Jeff, what did you do?
I just shoved it in my mouth and ate it.
Yes.
It was the only path.
So if you
So-
you would pass the note to the player that is going to be possessed, like you are now possessed. Don't let anybody know. Then they would eat the paper. If it was flavored paper,
They
that
would be more willing to go along with.
Yes, it'd be much more enjoyable.
That makes a lot more sense.
See,
The next note I pass to a player is going to say, "Eat this piece
Yes.
of paper."
there you go.
Just
While
to see
staring at player
Yes.
4.
beforehand, like spill some soda on it or something. So maybe it has a little bit of a
Oh yeah,
Like a
Cook it
coffee
up a
stain
bit.
or something.
Yes,
Fanta.
yes.
A little tang.
So I was going to say that I think that a lot of the time players don't like the idea of being told what their character is going to do, and I mean that's understandable. D&D is about like you're in control of this character, you do what you want. But I think that campaigns could do with a little bit more. The GM takes control of a player's character for a short period of time. Don't abuse it, of course, but I think that and not necessarily the GM actually taking control, but just telling the player, you now have to act like this. Even if it's just for a short
weird personality trait.
Right. Even if it's just for a short period of time, I think that can enrich a game, but I have played with players that I feel like if the GM told them that, they'd be like, no, my character wouldn't do that.
No way. And it's the thing. The interesting thing is, it's often not my character wouldn't do that. That is suboptimal.
Sure.
Rather than like having an argument as to, well, actually, my character's got these 3 reasons why they wouldn't do that. It's like, no, I just like this would mean I would lose hit points or gold perhaps, so I don't do it. It's like, but do the interesting thing though.
Yeah.
I think
Go
one way to
poke the
make it super
dragon.
interesting. One way to make it super interesting would be to slide over a new character sheet towards them.
And then make them eat it. Yeah.
No, but just give them a different character sheet for their possessed character.
Yeah. I like that idea.
So you've got, like, for instance, you could give them no strength score. Like, the possessing spirit hasn't quite worked out the physical
Sure.
interactions. It can move about,
That's
but it
fun,
can't lift anything. So the player has to avoid all physical labor. They can only do things like, oh, you should really lift that up. That looks heavy. You're the barbarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's been a long day. I'm going to lie down here.
And sabotage whatever you're doing next.
Sure.
But that could be fun.
I've started playing a game with some friends from work that we're going through the Tomb of Annihilation, and I haven't, of course I haven't read the module, but the DM did show me just like there's like one little table in the back of the book where I guess small spoilers for Tomb of Annihilation. Apparently there's a point where players can get possessed, and the way that it works is that when that happens, I think the character gets like some sort of a mechanical benefit, but one of their personality traits. So like you've got like your trait, your ideal, your bond, your flaw.
Yeah.
One of those gets replaced with one specific to that possessing spirit.
Oh, that's kind of
I
fun.
think that's a neat idea.
So you can still use it to gain inspiration, as it were.
I suppose, yeah. But it's just kind of like a way to tell the player, hey, I want you to act in this way,
Yeah.
however you interpret that.
Yeah, it's backed up by something written on your sheet.
Yeah. So
And in a small, doable way. as well.
That's a good point. Like rewarding them with inspiration if they go through the whole possession.
yeah.
If they go through with it well, if they do it well, they get rewarded at least in some way that they can then later use.
Sure. Because if a player's going to be, like I said, a lot of players don't want to be told how to play their character. If you're going to be doing that, I think it is good to give the player some sort of a benefit, maybe even after the fact, maybe just like a non-tangible thing. Give the player some sort of a reward for playing along.
Yeah, sort of thank you.
Yeah.
And depends on like the level of possession that it is. Like if it's just like a suggestion spell or something like that. If it's just like a 1-word kill sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe allow the player to be as creative as possible in achieving that suggestion, but doing it in their own way. So like kill this if you're being told to kill something that character wouldn't normally want to kill, finding some way around that, or some clever way around it could let that be allowed, but the player would have to be pretty creative to do it.
Yeah,
Sure.
If I could kill them with kindness.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I'm going to hug you.
Smother
to
them
death.
with this nice pillow.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever used possession in a game necessarily, but there was a time when the character that Jeff mentioned that took over for the character that was the hunter-gatherer, there was an adventure where I think your character got replaced by a doppelganger, correct?
okay, that's what it was. It wasn't possession. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so I came to you beforehand and I was like, hey, is it all right with you if I replace your character with a doppelganger for an adventure?
Yeah.
And you said, yeah. And then I think I gave you some tips or whatever for what I want you to do, but it was up to you how to actually play it.
Sure. Yeah.
Wait a second. He doesn't normally eat that many dogs.
One or two, sure. Eight?
I mean, everyone eats a dog. All right, well, thank you for answering.
Oh, no
the question
problem.
on your question answering
No
podcast.
problem. I think is that
Wait, we're probably just going to cut this bit out and paste it directly into our podcast.
sure.
It's like, who are these guys?
Suckers.
or just cut out our audio so that it's you guys and be like, yeah, sure.
Fascinating.
Um,
Dogs? Yeah.
Slice a dog. No.
All right, guys. Well, I think that'll do it for questions. Let's take a moment. Let's wind down. Let's take a deep breath.
Sorry.
Thank you, Jeff. We are going to reflect back on the people who have come before us, who have made a noble sacrifice, possibly an ignoble sacrifice, so that we may have a better world to live in. So we're going to sit back and toss another log onto the funeral pyre.
Is that what you call them? Logs? These are people.
You monster.
Jesus Christ.
So Grant, you have a story for us for the funeral pyre, correct?
So this is a story which involves both Chris and I.
Okay.
And it is my first character death.
Ooh.
Interestingly enough. So this was back in first year of university. I went back to I went to stay with Chris over New Year's Eve, over New Year's, and sort of filling the time around that. We went and played some games. His mate Steve ran us a game, or one of his friends. It doesn't hugely matter. Anyway, it was a Ravenloft game,
Okay.
and we were tackling, what's the name of the vampire, Chris?
Strad von Zarovich.
Thank you. We were tackling Strad von Zarovich in his house, in his little cottage, castle.
That's the one.
Ravenloft.
Quaint
Castle
little
Ravenloft.
place.
Yeah. Real twee kitsch, some might say. And I was playing kind of a Van Helsing style wizard. And we had a paladin, and God knows what. I think Chris was a rogue or something.
Yeah.
You wouldn't play a rogue, would you? What the fuck?
No,
were you?
I think I was actually a rogue for once.
Oh, okay, cool. So we were all getting ready to charge in to take on Strahd.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Cool. Yeah. And so we were really worried that he'd hurt us. So we all formed up in a line. We had the paladin in the front, rogue second, and the wizard in, and we got everything sorted. I cast buffs on everyone. We're all geared up. We're gonna do this. Yeah. We run in round one. He lightning bolts all of us, and we die.
Oh my.
Just straight out.
We were in a perfect line. We couldn't have presented ourselves better.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That was my first character death.
I have
We just went home.
I have been fortunate enough to never be a part of TPK.
Yeah.
But
They're
man,
brutal.
your first character.
Yeah. Well, it's my first character death. It wasn't my first.
Oh, well,
character.
yeah,
I
sorry.
had other characters. And,
Good point.
I'd survived campaigns before then, not through any skill,
Sheer luck.
but just through luck. But that was my first kind of on table death.
Sure.
That happened. It was quite strange. It was an emotive moment.
And it
I
wasn't
think
even
actually
one
Chris-
of those grueling fights where you're
No,
worn
it just
down.
sort of happened.
Oh, that's over.
Chris was my first kill as well.
Oh.
Yes.
You were infiltrating a makeshift public access television studio. where a creature made out of an entire sitcom stapled together, all the members of a sitcom, club you to death on the floor with a pot plant.
In Issa Terrorists.
I have to say that
It was in the My Little Pony role-playing game.
That is quite possibly the greatest description of a monster I've ever heard.
You need to play more Issa Terrorists.
What was his name? Mr. Black? Mr. Black was there. Yeah, Issa Terrorists has so there's this book called The Book of Unremitting Horror. Mm-hmm. It's like a monster manual, and it has Chris's favourite monster in it.
It has a lot of terrifying monsters.
Which is the Snuff Golem.
Which is exactly what it sounds like.
It's every element of a snuff film jammed together into a monster.
Oh my!
Oh,
It
wow!
is
Yeah,
horror.
at the moment of death, it forms, and then like it hunts down people who've been involved in other snuff films.
Wow,
it's brilliant. It's a brilliant monster.
The Book of Unremitting Horror is aptly named.
Yes.
my goodness! All right.
Not a fun read.
Okay. Do you guys recall what your characters' names were in the that Ravenloft campaign?
I remember mine.
Dead Guy 1.
What was yours?
Mine was Vincent Harrow.
Vincent.
Okay.
Vincent Harrow.
Yep.
I think I was playing. It was probably something along the lines of Helsing, but changed a little bit.
Okay.
Belsing.
Like Hellstrom.
Sounds about right.
Let's go for Hellstrom.
Sure. All right. So let's raise a glass in memory of Vincent Harrow and Hellstrom, or Ersatz Van Helsing, as we
remember not
as we remember not to run in a straight line towards a super powerful vampire NPC.
Clank.
Well, that'll do it for today. First, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us. It's been fun.
I think this has been, without question, the funniest episode of the podcast that we've ever done.
I hope it's been the least helpful.
Well, would you guys
close, maybe.
Would you guys like to plug your show, plug your RPGs, anything you want to plug? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, shall I just do the standard outro?
Yeah,
block?
please.
If you like what you heard on this podcast, you should come along to check us out. We are Hearty Dice Friends. We're on SoundCloud. You can also check out, we have a Twitter account on twitter.com/Hearty Dice Friends. But most importantly, you should give us some money.
Yes.
But we'll on our Patreon. But we'll tell you about the Patreon when you come hang out on our show.
Okay.
Because that seems a bit rude. Also, if you're interested in looking at our games, Chris and I and my wife, we are incorporated a business. We are Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. If you go to rowanrookanddeckard.com, that's no K in Deckard. You can download all of our games. Some of them for free, some of them for not. Including most but not all of the one-page games I write, which we really need to fix.
Yeah.
So yes, anything else? I'm JS Howitt on Twitter. Chris is the Madigan, double D 1G on Twitter. Is that right, Chris?
That is right.
Oh, there we go. Check us out. Follow us around. I post a lot of selfies.
He posts a lot of selfies.
Chris doesn't post at all. We're like the original Odd Couple. Hey!
You guys didn't want to plug it, but I'll go ahead and plug it. Go to patreon.com/Hearty Dice Friends to toss some money to the Hearty Dice Friends here.
Bang us a buck.
All right. So once again, thank you very much. If anybody would like to submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, and important links, go to interpartyconflict.com. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict, where I post weekly discussion questions for you. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you feel like donating, we have a PayPal donate button on our website. Anything you can give us would go towards making the podcast better. Jeff, do you want to tell us about FriendQuest?
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games such as The Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara.
Yes. Also, head on over to audibletrial.com/conflict. Get yourself a free audiobook. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from. I guarantee you can find something you like 100% for free. And I should mention that last episode we had Tom Russell on, and they are giving out 2 free printable board games to anybody who answers our survey at bit.ly/interpartyconflict. So take our short survey, takes just a couple minutes. You'll get yourself 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Tom and Mary at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hackers RPG. So once again, thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
That is the most professional outro I've ever been a part of.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm in
That is
awe.
you guys just have everything covered. I'm so impressed.
Well-
Chris, we gotta sort our shit out.
If you say so.
Step your game up, boys.
I like to think we have rustic charm.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, again, I've said it several times, but thank you so much. I had a great time having you on the show. I really, really appreciate it. I think your podcast is great. And yeah, I hope you guys had a good time too.
It was wonderful.
Every time. Like,
Okay, and Chris and Grant, until next time.
keep it into party.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. There's
Why didn't I think of that?
there's so much there. Gad nap.
Never.